All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ, all the way over there in Los Angeles, California, a Chase Thomas Podcast. OG Jovan Buha himself. Jovan, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. How are you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. What's the story behind the smiley face basketball behind you right now?
Honestly, I just like it.
Mm-hmm.
It's this brand, Chinatown Market, and they're like a streetwear brand. And when I saw they had a smiley face basketball, it comes in different colors. This was the one that appealed to me, and yeah, it's obviously doing something right, because I've probably been asked that a few times now of like, what, why do you have that? And I just puts a smile on my face. I love basketball, and I think it encapsulates that.
What's the most exciting part about the Lakers season being over for you? So you get to do X that you don't get to do during the NBA Lakers season.
Sleep. That is the thing. Sleep and less travel. So just overall health, mental health, physical health, that has increased in the past week or so. But I miss it already. I miss the grind and the travel and the games. But from a health perspective, it is definitely better for my livelihood.
How many hours are you getting right now?
Depends on the day. I'm shooting for 7 to 8. That's like, I've had a couple days I've slept a good 10, 11, 12. Like, just been like, I'm putting my new thing is I put my phone on airplane mode. So I just, cause there's so many times I'll get like a call that wakes me up, or like a bunch of texts. I have a bunch of Twitter notifications for certain accounts, and that stuff just will inevitably wake me up. So my new thing is just airplane mode. Don't bother me. I have no real responsibilities until free agency draft time. So the next few weeks, it's just going to be about continuing to write a few times a week, and then getting as much sleep as I can.
And then appearing on the Chase Thomas Podcast when you can.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
There you go. What was different about the beat this year? What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn on the beat? What did you get better at? What changed for you this year?
Yeah, well, this was my first year covering the Lakers by myself. The 2 previous years, I had a partner, Bill Oram, who's now a columnist at the Oregonian up in Portland. So I had obviously done it with covering the Clippers for a couple of years by myself, but Lakers is just a different beast. And so I think this year I really grew as a reporter. I grew, wrote several features, several columns that I was proud of. So really just continuing to grow, I think, in all facets of my writing and reporting. Also, season 2 of Stargazing went well, and got some good guests, got a lot of good feedback on that.
The Vic episode was great.
Thank you. And that was the one that I was really excited for. She was one of the initial guests I had in mind when I started the project, and to get her in season 2 and to end it that way was a nice capper. Been doing more TV. Recently did the Bill Simmons podcast. So like, it's just been, the opportunities have been coming, more and more. And it's just been nice to see the hard work and growth kind of paying off. So for me, I'm never satisfied. I can, I sound like a player with the cliches, but I want to, like, I'm in the film room, rereading my stuff, listening to podcasts, watching my tape on TV, and trying to get better. So it's been fun. And I think this season, like, I think one thing, it's kind of weird as a beat writer, like, you don't, or you're not supposed to root for the team you cover. You're supposed to be objective. Obviously you're focusing more on the team and those storylines and the players and whatnot, but this was also probably the first time this was my first conference finals run for a team that I've covered. I hopped on the Suns in 2021, and obviously they went to the finals, but it is like interesting to kind of see like just what comes with a deeper playoff run, and how that's probably better for business, so to speak. And so it's one of those things where like I wasn't rooting for the Lakers, but the Lakers doing well was probably better for me professionally. So overall, it was a great season. The first half, did not expect any of what happened in the second half to happen, but after the trade deadline, the run they went on, it was a special season, and one that I will likely remember for a while.
I like it. Speaking of remembering different things about this Lakers season, who stood out to you that you really enjoyed talking with and covering this year, that you really enjoyed the back and forth with one particular Laker? Who was it this year?
I would say I highlight a couple guys. I would say Austin Reeves, and just his growth and ascension in year two. I think he was the third best player on a team that made the Western Conference Finals, and going from, in less than 2 years, he went from being an undrafted player to being a starter. And again, I think really it's not debatable, like the third best guy on that team. So he's someone that he's always been great with the media, but just seeing the attention on him and the spotlight grow, and him staying true to who he is and not really changing, I think has been something that's been nice. And he's one of the best dudes that I've interacted with. And then Wenyen Gabriel. Wenyen Gabriel is someone that it kind of started as a fashion thing where commenting on his outfits and talking about his clothes and different things, but Wenyen became a go-to guy for me in the locker room in terms of just after a game, maybe asking him a question or just running strategy or something by him, and him helping me understand different things. So I would say Austin and Wenyen were probably my two favorite guys to interact with this year.
Did you spend any amount of time with Rob Pelinka this year? Did you get a lot of one-on-one time? Yeah.
Rob and I have a good relationship. He obviously only speaks to the media a few times a year, but he's so busy that it's hard to, he's a hard guy to track down, but definitely, I don't know, half dozen or so times, before games, we were able to catch up for 10-15 minutes.
Well, speaking of the Lakers here, and we'll talk some NBA Finals too here, Jovan, but I want to first ask you, when immediately after Lakers are eliminated, it comes out that LeBron might be thinking about retirement, right? And as someone who broke his foot last year and reading the stuff on his foot, I was like, I don't know how LeBron played on what I've read about what he was going through with his foot, and we'll see whether or not he has surgery on it and what that timeline looks like. But it's not fun recovering. I don't care what kind of cryogenic chamber LeBron is going in. It's gonna be hard, and then there's a mental aspect to trusting it again. He's older, and we'll see what he looks like. But I could not believe that was something that he was playing through and playing really well. You saw what just a bad high ankle sprain or ankle injury can do to a star like Tatum, where you only can do so much to power through it. And I think LeBron deserves a lot of credit for that. But when you saw that right after, what was your immediate thought on LeBron and retirement? And for you, based on following this team and getting more and more familiar with LeBron and his camp and just the Lakers as a whole, did you see that as a realistic possibility, or do you always know that LeBron would take some time and then he'd be back?
No, I mean, it definitely caught me off guard. I know it caught pretty much everyone in that room off guard, and just talking to people with and around the team, no one was expecting that comment from him or had heard any murmurs of him, potentially retiring or thinking about it. That was something that was definitely kept internal. I think there's several ways to look at it. Like, one, it's the heat of the moment. It's the, competition. He's coming off of a 40-point near triple-double. They just got swept. And, to your point, like, he has been dealing with this foot injury for months, came back earlier than expected, and it was with the hopes of winning a championship, and they fell short. So I think for him, year 20, age 38, like he's got a lot to think about of just, he's done everything you can do on a basketball court. He's broken, after passing Kareem, he's basically broken every major record. Is in the top 10 in points, rebounds, and assists. Is in the playoff leader in several categories, including minutes and points. Like, aside from adding championships to his ledger, there really isn't much more for LeBron to accomplish from an accolade and achievement standpoint on a basketball court. So, the one thing that had kind of been there, of course, was potentially playing with, or at least on the same floor as his son Bronny. But that was even something he had kind of softened over the last few months, where initially it was, I want to play with Bronny. Then it became, I want to share the floor with him. And then in the second round of the playoffs, he was asked after Bronny committed to USC, and it became, well, that's my dream to play with him, but I don't know if that's his dream. And as his father, I have to respect his dreams and just, support him and do whatever I can as his dad. So LeBron is kind of even softened that a bit. And I think that might not be necessarily the factor that it was before, but I think there's kind of the exhaustion and just the mental, like, do you want to, get foot surgery and go through the rehab and, have to ramp up for training camp and just go through that process again. There's also, like, how many times have we seen a major performance from LeBron in an elimination game to save his team's season? And he gave them basically all he could. He played for all but 4 or 5 seconds, depending on what box score you look at. Again, 40-point near triple-double, and it still wasn't good enough. And I think on some level there has to be a bit of a humbling of just his basketball mortality and just him, whether it's because of him or, the Lakers supporting cast or just how great Denver was. Like, you could look at it several ways, but it wasn't good enough at the end of the day to even win a game in the series, let alone win the series. So I think he's wrestling with his mortality and just the foot and do I want to come back? Do I want to deal with all this? I think there's also a part of it that's a leverage play of just, he's been vocal about adding Kyrie Irving and, in front and behind the scenes, talked about it ahead of the trade deadline of, he'd love to acquire Kyrie. So I think there could be some posturing there of just trying to put pressure on the Lakers to add a Kyrie Irving, add a Trae Young, add a Fred VanVleet, and kind of finally address that point guard spot that has been so difficult for them to solidify. D'Angelo Russell, of course, didn't have the best postseason performance, to say the least. Really struggled in that Denver series, but really struggled before then. He was very up and down in the first couple rounds, had some big performances, but also had some duds. So I think there's a lot of kind of ways to look at it, but from what I've been told with people, again, around and with the team, everyone expects LeBron to be back. The Lakers are proceeding as if he's going to be back, and I'd peg it at around a 10% chance he's not a Laker.
Do you think he's ready for game one, though?
That's a little trickier because it's going to depend on, like, he's going to get an MRI in his foot. Not sure if that's happened yet or not, but once that gets settled, he'll have to decide when does he want to have foot surgery. If he is going to have it, what's the timetable? We've seen famously, I think the most famous example was Shaq back in the day with the Lakers. I got injured on company time, so I'm going to rehab on company time and got surgery early in training camp and ended up missing a couple months. I think in the 2002-2003 season. So I don't think LeBron goes that route necessarily, but I don't know if he's in a rush to get surgery and could that be something that potentially lingers into training camp, preseason, et cetera. Like we'll see. So that's not as clear of just when exactly he'll be back. But from everything I'm hearing, the Lakers are expecting him to be back next season. What
about D'Angelo Russell? What percentage do you put at him coming back? Is it just like if they can get Kyrie, or is it like no matter what, we are going to find a way to maneuver around D'Angelo Russell being the lead guard here?
I'd probably put it like 65% that he's back. So more than half. I think that's the most likely scenario. I do think for the Lakers, if there is a way to sign and trade him and get something back, again, a Kyrie, a Trae Young, a Fred VanVleet, I think all those are pipe dreams. Maybe Fred VanVleet's the most realistic, but if they can swing one of those three guys or someone of that caliber, I think they do it in a heartbeat and they move on. But there just really isn't a market for D'Angelo Russell right now. I think if you look at his recent history in the playoffs, again, the up and down nature of his performance in 2023, but also even his Minnesota stuff, and then I think his reputation has kind of taken a hit since Brooklyn, particularly in LA and Minnesota, and he's just no longer viewed as the former number 2 pick, former All-Star. Like I think it's viewed as like he's probably a below average starting point guard, and probably more in that like 20 to 30 range if you're ranking guys, and so like I just don't think there's much of a market for him. If you look at the teams that have cap space, it's all young teams that have young backcourts that are developing or have high draft picks in this upcoming draft that could be taking a guard there. So I just don't really see a clear suitor for him in free agency. So on one hand, that helps the Lakers in terms of leverage with him, where I think his contract's going to be less than he thinks it is going to be or should be. I think I could see something more in like the 18 to 20 million range annually, whereas he was looking for something more 25, 30 million. That had been previously reported about his time in Minnesota, but also I'd kind of heard murmurs when he was acquired by the Lakers at the trade deadline that those are kind of the numbers he was looking at. But I just don't see how he has the leverage to ask for that. I don't see how he has the leverage for the Lakers to accept that demand. And so I think for the Lakers, it's exploring sign-in trades. What can we get back for him? If we attach potentially a first-round pick or a young asset, and then if there's nothing really out there, which is what I suspect they will find, aside from maybe Van Vliet, then I think it's most likely just keeping D'Lo, but at a more reasonable cost, because with the new CBA, every dollar is going to matter.
Yeah, it's interesting to see like basketball Twitter, everyone talking about the new CBA, and like this, a lot of capologists now have popped up, and Jovan, I'm not gonna lie, I see this, and now if I ever want to like really come across as an NBA knower, I need to just be like, look, with the new CBA coming into the fold, every dollar counts. Like, look,
you can just you can just dismiss anything. And
be like,
use the new CBA.
You don't get it. It's the new CBA.
It is though, like I think it is going to be interesting to see how this changes team building, because the penalties are so strict for teams above the luxury tax. And like there's kind of the sweet spot, not to nerd out too much, but like with the projected luxury tax of 162, if you're kind of in that first tier of 162 to 169, you're just going to get kind of the typical luxury tax penalties. But if you get between 169 and 179, that's the first apron. Then all of a sudden you start to get all these penalties. Then if you go over the 179, or I guess it's 179.5, the second apron, all of a sudden it's like, can't take back more money in trades, can't sign guys in the buyout market, can't trade picks 7 years out. Like, it's some crazy stuff that actually like really matters, where if you're looking at how you build a team, like, is signing that guy, if you're the Warriors, is signing the Dante DiVincenzo worth not being able to get a buyout guy or not being able to get more money back in? Like, probably not. So you're going to start to see, I think that the middle class of the NBA is really going to get squeezed here. And it's really going to become a bunch of top heavy rosters where like 2 to 4 guys are paid 15 plus million. And then the rest of the guys are battling for scraps of like vet minimum up to like 5-7 million. So I think for the Lakers, like
more movement too. On that
more movement for sure, but like for the Lakers, that I think that matters, where it's like if you have LeBron and AD, they're making a combined 87 million next year. You're trying to keep Austin Reeves, you're trying to keep Rui Hachimura. All of a sudden, like just with those 4 guys, you're probably at let's just say 115. You're like, now you add in D'Angelo Russell wants to be getting paid 20 plus million, and that's without you got to fill out a roster, and you're gonna have
Shredder back.
Yeah, so like, it's just, it adds up quickly. And again, the penalties like there's just gonna be a lot of teams that are gonna look at it like the difference between player X at 5 million, 10 million versus a free agent that's a veteran minimum guy isn't big enough to warrant all these penalties that come with this. So like, you're just going to see a lot of guys get screwed where, and I'm sure it'll end up kind of, there's always kind of a unintended consequence where I could also just see like, it might end up being, we've seen sometimes with the way that the new CBA is, or, recently the new CBA has gone where guys will leave bigger markets maybe for more money in a smaller market, and like markets maybe aren't as important as they used to be. I could see the opposite kind of becoming true now where it's like, well, if I'm going to get paid the vet minimum, why would I not want to be in a better city? Like, now it doesn't really matter. Like, why would I want to be in city X or Y when I could be in city A or B? So I think you could also see markets and just like lifestyle kind of come back into the fold where if the money's even, I think those types of things start to matter more than I think the way the CBA was previously set up.
Great news for Oklahoma City. And that nightlife scene, like, that's
and they got a bunch of dudes that like they can't keep all those guys.
Yeah,
we'll see.
I like it. NBA Finals, Jovan. Where are you leaning right now after watching the Nuggets dismantle the Los Angeles Lakers in 4 games? Do you think it's Nuggets in 4 again? Do you think it's Nuggets in 5, or are you more like Nuggets takes a while to 7, or do you think the Heat can actually? Because I don't see Heat in like 4 or 5. Like, I don't think that's a possibility. I think if it's a short series, it's the Nuggets, and if it's a long series, then maybe you can talk yourself into it. But also, there have been exactly 0 teams that have won the NBA Finals as an 8th seed, and if there's one thing the NBA is really good at, it's pounding home the point that if you are a top 2 seed, your odds of winning an NBA championship are very, very high. And I just can't shake it. I have Nuggets in 5, but I'm curious to see where you're at with this.
I have Nuggets in 5 as well.
Okay.
So we're on the same page. I was close between 5 and 6. I do think like Spo deserves respect as the best coach in the game. Like I think coaching's probably overrated like overall to some extent, but I think Spo has shown how invaluable it can be when you have a truly great coach who can make great adjustments on the fly with both your rotation and from a strategy and tactical perspective. So I think this is probably going to be the biggest test that, it's definitely the biggest test Denver's faced just in terms of like, obviously it's the biggest series, it's the finals and whatnot. But I think Miami is just the way they've played and going through Boston and Milwaukee. I think, they're going to be the biggest challenge for Denver. I just think ultimately it comes down to, I don't think Miami can score with them. And we've just seen no one can stop this Denver offense. And like, they just don't have off nights. And of course that could change. And, maybe game 1, they're a little rusty because of all the time off, but this is shaping up to be one of the best offenses of all time. Jokic is having one of the best playoff runs we've ever seen. Jamal Murray has been awesome and a true number 2 or number 1B. And I just think, and like their supporting cast, like that was really to me the difference in the Lakers series, where it was like the Lakers kind of got by with their supporting cast in the Memphis and Golden State series of those guys outplaying those teams, respective supporting casts. But Denver, it was Aaron Gordon and Bruce Brown and KCP and Jeff Green and like all those guys just making timely shots and big plays. And, the Lakers trying to pick on them defensively and them holding their own. So I just don't see the weak spot in this Denver group right now, aside from knock on wood and injury. And, for Miami, it felt like they were able to win some ugly games in the Boston series and the Milwaukee series and the New York series. I think more, and not to take anything away from the Heat, but just more so because of the limitations of the other teams, of Milwaukee not having Giannis for a couple games and them just their offense devolve. Every postseason we see it, their offense just devolves into a mess in crunch time. Boston not being able to get out of their own way with turnovers and They're, I mean, honestly, kind of the same thing where, and you got to give Miami credit for forcing some of those things, but we've also seen those teams struggle with those, facets of the game against other opponents. So it's not strictly because of just Miami. And then New York also, Thibodeau teams always kind of struggle offensively in the playoffs. So like, I think, for as much of an adjustment as it might be for Denver facing a Miami group that has a similar level of cohesion and shooting and ball movement offensively, I think it's going to be an adjustment for Miami facing a team that can score and plays the way that Denver plays offensively, because they've faced a lot more ISO heavy, teams that just aren't as good with the ball and in transition and whatnot. So I think I'm with you. Like I'm kind of in between Denver and 5 or 6. I think Miami is good enough to junk it up and find a way to steal a game or two. But I think my official pick is Denver in 5.
On the Athletic NBA show today, I was listening to David Aldridge, Marcus, and Nikias talk about the series, and something that I thought was super interesting, because obviously Miami does that. They were throwing the zone a lot at Boston, right? And Jaylen Brown was really into dribbling the ball everywhere but where it needed to go. The man is just, I would love a 30 for 30 or some sort of, Jared Weiss needs to do the deep dive in how Jaylen Brown became such a bad dribbler when he's so good at so many other things. Like it's just such a weird thing to watch that man dribble and to just want to close your eyes because you're like, this is not going to end well. All that being said, what Nikias and them were talking about was just like the Nuggets are just such a bad matchup for that zone stuff that they're going to do. It's like the way to beat the zone efficiently is like the big in the middle who's just an elite passer who can just swing the ball around the perimeter and find the open guys. Like, they have the shooters, they have the big in the middle. You can't play it. So, like, that's not going to work. And then you're seeing that, like, Kevin Love or Cody Zeller might be heavily involved here. And I'm like, that's probably not great for this series. So, I don't see, like, it's just so boring, right? And this was something that I think a compliment to Denver is that, like, they are boringly great. And there were some folks who the last couple weeks have gotten annoyed with the coverage of the Nuggets. Like, obviously, the camera panning to LeBron after the Nuggets sweep the Lakers, that got a lot of play of like, why are we immediately following around what LeBron and everybody else is doing? It's like, I think two things can be true. I think the Lakers can, and especially this Lakers run as a 7 seed, and like obviously right after LeBron contemplating retirement, and just the way the Lakers lost, and it's the Lakers. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong by saying the Lakers are more interesting of a franchise and a team right now, because I think a lot of people left them for dead. You and I on this podcast last December were like, before the trade deadline, before they made a bunch of important moves that got them there, but like, it took an Austin Reeves resurgence. It took, like, that was strange that Austin Reeves, like you said, became the 3rd best player. That's really interesting. It's really interesting that Dennis Schroeder had to play in game 4 and start and was such an important defender for Los Angeles. Rui Hachimura is doing ISO post-ups with important possessions late in the 4th, and I think game 3 or game 4. And you're like, this is really weird. This is not where I thought this season was going to go in Los Angeles. And like, is that it? Did the Lakers just miss their moment? Their last opportunity to have like a healthy LeBron, or he wasn't even healthy, a healthy Anthony Davis and LeBron for a full playoff run. Was that where they're maxed out? Like, there were all kinds of different storylines that made the Lakers situation interesting. And the Nuggets are just competently good, where you're like, well, they did what they were supposed to do. And I think that's a compliment. So I think there is a way to frame it where it doesn't come off as like, we don't want to cover you because you're in this small market or you're this, that, and the other. It's just that, like, Jokic has been the best player in basketball again. He's been unbelievable again. Jamal Murray is doing what he did in the bubble again. And they just have the best starting 5 across the board. Like, that's just not even debatable. Like, they've been all year long this super consistent, cohesive monster that's remained healthy and answered every challenge. So yeah, these are all positives, but I think it's hard to come up with new ways to talk about the Nuggets right now, because you and I are just talking about, like, they should win in 5 and that should just be it. Like, they should win pretty easily and they're the champs. they've just kind of created a great, perfect team, and they have arguably the best player in basketball and one of the best playoff guards. I mean, we've seen the last decade in the NBA and Jamal Murray when he gets going. So I think those are all positives, and you get a healthy Michael Porter Jr., which they really needed this year to finally have a healthy Michael Porter Jr. for this run. Aaron Gordon to throw on opposing best wings, and then also a dude who's done it before, a guy KCP, who has just been invaluable to them, and then Bruce Brown when they need somebody to get on the floor and talk to the opposing bench and opposing coaches, that you got your guy. Does that all make sense? Is that fair? Because I just feel like Twitter has this disconnect, NBA Twitter especially, with how they're covered. Because I think there's a way to do it without being disrespectful and also adding some nuance to both sides here.
Yeah, and I would even, add to it. And I know there's just a subsect of the audience that doesn't love it, but I mean, I think it's also kind of as simple as they're the Lakers and they have LeBron James. And, you have, no offense to the Celtics, but I would say the glamour franchise of the last 3 decades, with just, even let's go back 4 decades with Magic and Kareem and Kobe and Shaq, and now LeBron. It's like they've had the biggest stars, like whatever your top 10 players of all time list is, like there's a high likelihood that 5 of them at least were Lakers at some point. So I think just the Lakers, and like it's good for the it's just objectively good for the league when the Lakers are good because of the attention and the eyeballs, and just as many people love them as hate them, and it kind of just draws that in. So I also think if people are like just judging it off of TV and what's being discussed, like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of natural that it's going to be the biggest stars and the biggest teams, and that's kind of how a lot of TV coverage works because they're trying to get as many eyeballs as possible. So I think if you listen to some of the smarter podcasts and read some of the smarter national writers, around the league, they are covering the Nuggets and they are praising the Nuggets, and like that's where you're going to get that more balanced and nuanced coverage. But if you're just looking at some of these debate shows or pre and post game shows of like what is going to attract the casual viewer, it's going to be names like the Lakers and LeBron. And it's just like, I don't think LeBron is arguably the most famous North American athlete. It has been for a good 15 years. The Lakers, again, I just kind of mentioned the glamour NBA franchise of the last 30, 40 years. So it's like, I think if Denver is going to hold, my only issue with that was kind of like if Denver is going to hold their coverage, like standards to the same as the Lakers, I just like you're going to lose that fight 9 out of 10 times because they're the Lakers and they have LeBron, and there's just no one as captivating or interesting on the Nuggets as LeBron. And it's no shit. Like, I'm half Serbian. I love Jokic. He's my guy. I voted for him for MVP, but it's just, he isn't as captivating from like a personality and just historical perspective yet. Now, I think if he wins a title and they're in the same position next year, we'll probably be talking about it differently of what does this mean for Jokic's legacy and can he be, another title? Is he a top 10, 20 player? Is he a top 15? Like that's when those things start to kind of matter. But with LeBron, it's kind of always a legacy play of you kind of saw it on a daily basis of LeBron's legacy being rewritten after every playoff game. And that's just kind of how the news cycle and sports take society is. So my only issue was like, I don't know, if Denver was playing a different opponent and they weren't getting the same level of coverage, I would understand more their qualms. But like the Lakers and LeBron are just such, driving forces for news and eyeballs and attention that like, I just think trying to compare themselves to that is always going to be a losing battle in my opinion.
Yeah. And look, I think it's going to be interesting because it's like, I feel I would be pretty floored if the Nuggets didn't win the title, and then you're okay. That's 1 title, 2 MVPs for Jokic. And for me, I wonder, do the Nuggets go the Bucks route where it looks like that 1-year blip where they kind of lucked out and they got their title, but things have obviously fallen apart there. Bud's gone, and we'll see how much, like Chris Middleton hasn't been able to stay healthy when they needed him. Like, Drew Holiday obviously had an all-star year. He was a great player, but like it looks unlikely that Giannis is it going to be able to create some sort of long-term multi-title dynasty in Milwaukee, that it's just probably not going to go that route, where he builds the Tim Duncan, Dirk Nowitzki type era in Milwaukee. That being said, I think there's the flip side where it's like, okay, if Jokic gets it, do they go that way? Or do they go the other way where it's like, do they have the Spurs thing where it's like, is he now like they have this perfect five? Jamal Murray's young, Michael Porter Jr.'s young, Aaron Gordon's locked in for the long term. You look at it and you'll have to move, like, obviously, hey, I don't know if you knew this or not, but so the new CBA, you're going to have to squeeze a little bit and you're going to have to be really careful. Jovan Buha.
Yes.
And there's going to be the haves and the have-nots here. The middle class is going to get squeezed. You're going to have to be really careful with your checkbook. Like,
are we talking about the stock market here, or are we talking about...
Well, I just want to let people know that I'm on the up and up when it comes to the new CBA that's coming into the fold here. And I think there's more reason for optimism that the Nuggets can keep some sort of dynasty going over the foreseeable future. I think it's sturdier than what Milwaukee had. And I think it'll be interesting to watch because, like, they kind of just had the perfect year. And, I mean, health is going to be a big part of this, but they have their core. They're in the right age range. Coach is solid. I mean, it's hard for me to see this kind of deteriorating the way that it has for some other franchise guys surrounded by a good young core. I think it all works and all makes sense, and you can see it, but I'm very excited to see if it's a one-year blip or if it's they win 2 titles in like 4 years. And that's when the Nuggets get very interesting and they start being looked at and talked about in a different way.
And in Denver's defense, I mean, the last time they were truly healthy, they made the conference finals.
Yeah.
They made the conference finals in 2020, and the last couple postseasons did not have Jamal Murray. Last year didn't have Murray and Michael Porter Jr. So it's like, you know, we can't really, it's hard to take away much from the last couple seasons with them. But really, this is kind of a continuation of what they built in 2020. You know, obviously they've built it before then, but kind of what they were building toward with that 2020 run to the conference finals. And I think it's been kind of funny to see a lot of the bubble stuff cemented and solidified over this postseason run. But I saw it firsthand, and I was covering the Clippers at the time, and they had absolutely no answer for the Jokic-Murray pick and roll. And at the time, a lot of the discourse was, you know, of course this happened against the Clippers. Like, these two guys just kind of got hot, and they just had an incredible shooting series, and da-da-da. And then the Lakers kind of put the clamps on them a little bit and you know, beat them in 5. But I think we've seen since then, like, Jokic has won 2 MVPs, finished second this season. Murray obviously got injured the following season, but now that he's back is playing at an even higher level. And, like, those two dudes are just legit. And, you know, maybe the best pick and roll game we've seen in the modern era since Stockton and Malone. You know, maybe Nash and Amari for a couple of years there, but, like, Murray and Jokic are right there. And just with Jokic, the inside out, Murray, his ability to shoot on and off the ball, and just it's just high level stuff. And I think whatever you try to take away, they're going to find the counter to that, and it's just really incredible. So yeah, I mean, I think, like, the one thing is, I think Bruce Brown's probably gone. He's going to get paid this offseason. So that's probably the one piece they end up losing. But, you know, I think Denver probably makes itself now more of a destination where someone else can step in for the non-tax or taxpayer mid-level and, you know, sign with them. So I think that starting group, just, you know, when a lineup has that kind of special chemistry and continuity and just has that synergy that Denver has, and that group is scary. And yeah, I mean, that's why I think, you know, we're both picking them in 5. I just think it's no shade at Miami. I wouldn't be surprised if Miami makes it a 6 or 7 game series. I just think Denver's been that special during this run.
I like it. And look, if you're Calvin Booth, the Denver Nuggets GM, I think you go into this offseason looking at the new CBA and looking at what you're up against cap-wise. You need to look at, hey, we're not going to be able to pay everybody. It's going to be a lot more difficult when we get to the 160s, the 170s, the 150s. We're going to have to be careful because I don't know if you knew this or not, Jovan, but
All right, now I'm thinking you're making fun of me. All right,
No, I'm not actually making fun of you. I'm saying that like
No,
you
it's-
actually know
it's
what you're
fair.
talking about, but
That's fair.
it's just
I just learned
it's
all
a
this
cheat
stuff
code.
in the
It's a
last
life
2
hack.
days.
It's a life hack, folks, for any NBA fan that is like out and about with his friends on the weekend. If you want to just like really come off as an NBA knower, like this is what you want to do. There are some ways. There's a lot of life hacks here. You can fake your way through a fun NBA conversation at the bar.
Yeah.
Do it through these methods. Now, if you want to get in the nitty gritty, you're in trouble. Jovan can do that. Larry Kuhn can do that. I cannot, and most likely you cannot, because it's just I'm never gonna be a capologist. I'm not a money guy. I've tried. I literally, this is the dorkiest thing I've admitted on this podcast, Jovan. I read the whole CBAFAQ.com. Like I remember I was like, I'm just gonna, when I was in college, a lot of
Even
fun
I haven't
times.
done that, so that's impressive.
It was hard, and I'm reading through it, and I'm like taking notes, and I'm like, I'm Danny LaRue can have this. This is not gonna be for me. This is not the life I want. This is something that I don't have any context. This is too hard. I didn't major in it. It's just, I don't know. You were a journalism major, right? Are you a math guy? Yeah.
No, I haven't taken math since junior year of high school.
Wait, really? You didn't take math at USC at all?
No. Journalism didn't have to.
But even like undergrad, did you just AP everything out?
Yeah.
Okay. It's not bad.
What speaking of math, what do you think of this new contract from Monty Williams? It's a lot. Listen, I'm not great at math, but that's a lot of money for a coach.
I think it just shows where the Pistons are as an organization. It's not a reflection of Monty, and shout out to him. And it's funny too, because it's almost like, I don't know if you're still keeping up with college football all that much, but like Mel Tucker got the Brinks truck backed up for him when he was at Colorado. Very brief amount of time, right? And he was not like, he was at Georgia, it was the DC there, and then he moves over to Colorado, and it seems like he was going to stay there. And then Michigan State, obviously with having to move on from Mark D'Antonio, legendary coach for years, and they were like, okay, well, we struck out on a lot of people, and we kind of need, like, if Luke Fickle's not coming, and we really need to make this thing happen, because we're trying to get out of this bad situation, and we have a lot of donors and a lot of expectations that we need to be better. We need to save face here. We need to get somebody good. Monty Williams is a good basketball coach. Monty Williams, like, it goes back to that. I always think about the Chris Mannix tweet of like, would you rather have Brad Stevens or like, I always think about that when it comes to these kind of conversations. But like, I think that it's just different. Like, Michigan State didn't have any leverage. They needed somebody, and they needed someone good, a name that they knew could come in and win games. And Mel was good, a good hire. It just, Mel was like, I have all the leverage in the world. I know this is going to be hard. I am walking into a conference with Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State, and it's just a different era. Like, it's going to be hard for me to win a lot of football games here. How much money are you willing to go? And just keep saying no until it's so much where you're suddenly like a top 10 paid college football coach. And I think Monty's looking at it the same way, where it's like, I'm looking at the East right now. I don't know where Cade's health is at. They finished 5th in this lottery projection here. Am I starting Marvin Bagley and James Wiseman at the 4 or 5 going into next year? Like, this seems like a lot of losing, and this might be my last shot, because like Monty, this will be job number 3, right? Like, you don't, it's just really hard to get 4 or 5 NBA head coaching jobs. So like, if this is going to be it for Monty in terms of his last real opportunity, I guess you could always go the Alvin Gentry route, where it's like, are we sure the man is not going to pop back up as a head coach somewhere next year? Who knows? But I think it's a good hire for the Pistons, because it doesn't count against the salary cap. And if you think you got the guy, like, look, he's competent, he's good, and we'll see what happens. But it's a lot of money, and that just, I think, shows more of where the Pistons are, where it's like, Monty's like, this feels like 25 and 62. Like, I'm going to need you to keep backing this up, because I don't see a path to me making the playoffs or having a good, competent basketball team for the next couple of years. So if you fire me in the next 2 years because this team is not good, because the pieces just aren't there, at least I'm going to get paid really well in those couple of years, and maybe some buyout money and all that kind of stuff. That was my thought.
I wonder if this ends up being a groundbreaking contract in coaching because one, you've seen a lot of recent coaching contracts be a little bit shorter, where it's like 3+1 or a 4-year deal. And that's kind of the standard. Maybe if it's a head coach that the organization really loves, they'll give him like a 5-year deal. But for him to get it's not just a 6-year deal. According to my colleagues at The Athletic, James Edwards, the third, and Shams Sharania, there's team options for years 7 and 8. So this is upwards of an 8-year deal for about $100 million. The 78.5 is the largest sum of guaranteed money for a head coach in NBA history, and that's putting him at about a little over. I can't. This is where my math. It's like almost $13 million a year. So that's wild. Like that's a lot of money. Like I think coaching salaries aren't public, so we only know what gets reported, and there's a lot of times where like a Pop or a Spo signs an extension and we don't necessarily know the final figures, but that puts him, I would guess, at least top 5, if not top 3 in terms of,
I would say top 3 for sure.
Probably top 3. So that's pretty wild. And I like Monty. I think he's a good coach. I've had some recent conversations with people where they've been more down on him because of the way Phoenix has lost, in the past couple postseasons, but I think he's deserving of it. I think he's definitely a top 10 coach, if not, bordering on that top 5. I'd probably peg him off the top of my head more like 6 to 8. But it's interesting that this is something I feel like moving forward, if I'm a top coaching candidate, if I'm Mike Budenholzer and if he gets another opportunity, which I think he will, I'm looking at that like, well, I'm a championship head coach. I've won more than Monty. Like, where's my bag? So to your point, I think Detroit had to go over the top with both years and annual salary to secure him and to entice him. But it was just interesting to me that this could be one of those contracts that almost like I don't want to compare him to Timofey Mozgov, but kind of like in 2016 with Timofey Mozgov, kind of setting the center market. I wonder if this sets the coaching market for the next several years of all of a sudden we start to see all these 5 and 6 year deals. Because to your point, it's like if he gets fired in 2 years, he has 4 more years to get paid. Like that's the nice part of this for him, is the security of just he could do whatever and you have guaranteed money.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer for Monty Williams. I just imagine, can you imagine just being on the private plane and they're offering what now? No, send it back. And he's like, let me see Jaden Ivey shoot again. All right, send it back. Is that Jaden Duren and James Wiseman at the 4-5 last year? All right, send it back. We're going to need 8 years.
It's they have the number 1 pick, right? No, number 2, number 3, nope. Number 5. Yeah, okay. Well, that's
an
extra
job.
$10 million.
You can make the case that's bottom 3 job right now in the league.
You're saying overall or overall. What was available?
Overall.
Oh, this is interesting. Let me look at. I'll pull up the standings just because that'll help divide it a little bit. Okay, jobs I'd rather have, or I'd want less than Detroit.
The Hornets.
I'd rather have Detroit than Charlotte. I think Charlotte's future is pretty bleak. That might be it in the East. Honestly, Indiana, I love Tyrese Halliburton, but I kind of feel like they're in no man's land where they're going to kind of continue to just be what Indiana has always been, which is or for the most part, which is kind of a team just in the middle. But yeah, in the East, I guess definitively I'd only say Charlotte, and then in the West, San Antonio. You can't say that now. Houston, there's the Harden wrinkle
back there.
Yeah. Honestly, Portland to me is not really a great job. I think fair. You're kind of you're just not good enough, and we'll see what they do with the number 3 pick. But
I think the Pelicans' job sucks. Can you imagine this whole time you were the number 1 seed? People are gonna forget. I would hang the banner if I'm New Orleans, but the Pelicans were the number 1 seed in the Western Conference at one point this year. Late in the season, this was a scenario where there are receipts, there are podcasts, there are articles written where it's like the Pelicans have broken through, they are legit, they are a legitimate title contender, and then Zion is gone again. And you look at the games played and you see the best version of them, and you're like, oh, you can win the title. Like, for me as a coach, that would drive me absolutely insane.
I'll pull it up. So they were so December 12th was the last date. They were the number 1 seed.
Yeah.
And then, but flash forward January 17th, mid-January, they're the number 3 seed.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And then it's just a steep decline from there where 2 weeks later, they're at number 9.
Yeah.
So that mid-January tail off was just tank their season. I would also throw in, what was the team? Minnesota is not a great situation for me, which is the whole Gobert
contract so much that I'm like,
I love Ant.
I could see.
It's just the whole Gobert contract, and like that's just gonna be an anchor with the new CBA. That's gonna be an anchor on their cap sheet. Yeah, but I mean, to your point, yeah, Detroit's probably bottom.
The Mavericks
at least bottom 5, if not bottom 3.
The Mavericks job sneaky sucks too. Like, there's nothing around Luka now. They are so barren, and they don't have trade chips. It's just Brunson left for nothing. Like, you're just begging Christian Wood to bring something back. Like, that's a rough situation, I think, in Dallas. I would say that's a pretty tough one.
Would you sign and trade Kyrie? Like, Lakers obviously are a potential suitor there, but like, even let's take the Lakers out. Let's just say they're not trading. Like, would you? I guess would you re-sign Kyrie, or would you try and sign and trade him?
I wouldn't have done the Kyrie trade to begin with, but now that you're here, I don't think you have a choice. Like, I genuinely don't think you have a choice now. You're so far down the rabbit hole now with Luka, and at this point, like, he's playing like an MVP. You were in the Western Conference last year. You lose Jalen Brunson for nothing in embarrassing fashion. You go back-to-back years of losing important just co-backcourt mates for Luka, and just top 20 NBA players. Like, Jalen Brunson is right around there this year. He had an unbelievable year. Like, to lose those guys back to back, and because like Kyrie's not getting you anything better than what you're losing and moving on from him this offseason. So it's not like you're fixing.
Can I raise you a D'Angelo Russell?
Yeah,
with 2 first-round picks.
That doesn't help right now, because the picks are post picks.
Dallas has to keep him. Dallas has to keep him. They just have to. And then
I mean, I imagine
you can pivot at the trade deadline, and I'm sure the Lakers, if they haven't gotten another point guard, will be waiting there.
Yeah.
But it's
wherever Luka's running up the hill that I saw, you're just trying to, like, if you're Rob Pelinka, you're just, hey, D'Lo, how are you feeling about the Amazon right at the moment? Like, you just try and, hey, why don't you take a vacation here? And he's like getting the coordinates of where Luka actually is, so that they have an opportunity to bond and wherever. Like, I don't know where he was. I just saw that hit, like him running up the hill, and it looked like he was in the jungle, like getting in shape. And I was like, all right, well, that's cool. Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's one of the best offseason storylines is the annual Luka's in shape.
Do you know where he is?
I don't know. But it's funny.
I never saw where he was. I was like, where is Luka? Why does it look like he's literally running up the side of a Mayan pyramid? Like, where is Luka Doncic right now?
Maybe he's in Egypt.
Maybe. I don't know.
I guess that wouldn't technically. That was a bad reference by me. You said Mayan pyramids.
Oh, well, yeah. Well, you were thinking pyramids.
I was thinking pyramids, but
yeah, that's okay. And anyway. I also don't know how you run up a.
Listen, I haven't taken geography since probably like middle school, so forgive me.
California, the school system is a little bit different. They're just you're doing all kinds of stuff. It's like
bottom 10. I want to say
it's what?
Bottom 10.
Is it?
I think it's pretty low. I could be wrong. Maybe it's gotten better. I feel like when I was there, it always had like bad. Let's see.
I think it turned out okay, Jovan.
California school system's number 44 in the U.S.
Wow, I never would have guessed that.
Yeah.
So University of Tennessee has been number 1 forever. Many years saying.
Is it?
No.
Okay. Let's see.
Probably pretty solid.
You want to guess? Throw a number out.
What is the like? How are they ranking it?
I don't know what the criteria is.
Yeah, that would help if I could like have some sort of how many of their graduates go on to host successful podcasts, sports podcasts primarily. Pretty good. Pretty good track record.
This is hard to find. It just showed me the top.
Yeah.
The top rankings in of Tennessee high schools, not.
Yeah, a little bit different.
Yeah. If I find it before we end, I'll blurt it out.
Incredible. This is how you end a podcast, like diving into the scholastic rankings here for the state of Tennessee and California. There are a lot of Californians who moved here, Jovan, because they were just like, we look at how much money the California salary can go in Tennessee and then buying a lake house and all that kind of stuff. So there are a lot of Californians over here. Many are saying Jovan Buha could be the next one to make the jump.
Okay, here we go. Tennessee is 41. So we are both in the bottom 10. That explains the ending of this podcast right now.
Sorry, America. This is the best you had to offer. It's not our fault. It's not our fault. We did the best.
We're a product
of
our environments.
Absolutely. Jovan, stargazing. Folks can go check that out on the Athletic NBA show feed. Highly recommend the Count on Vic episode, the most recent one, to wrap up season 2. Really enjoyed that. And go check out all the podcasts there. We can read you at theathletic.com. Anything you want to plug specifically, Jovan?
Just the socials at Jovan Buha, Jovan Buha, particularly Twitter and TikTok. But also Instagram. So I guess all of them.
Are you doing all your own Instagram and TikTok and stuff?
I've been a little less active. Like the playoffs is just hard. Like there'll be kind of videos that pop up of just, something happens in a game or a press conference and I'll record it and put it there. But it was harder to create content during the playoffs. But gonna get more active now that I have a little bit of a break. So
there you go.
Be on the lookout for that.
I lied. I have one more quick question because you do the Celebrity Row videos, and it always cracks me up because I'll show my wife and I'll be like, Jovan is like half NBA reporter, half celebrity reporter, half shoe reporter. Like he's the only one who covers it this way, and it's cool because I'm like, I have no idea but how he does it. But you have Jack and like different guys. Give me your favorite Celebrity Row Laker game thing you noticed this year that was funny, interaction or like, oh wow, did they go large soda? I would never have guessed Adam Sandler ate this or what. Like, what was your favorite celebrity subtle sighting this year at a Laker game?
Well, I have to give a big shout out to Vin Diesel because and Bad Bunny to a lesser extent, but Vin Diesel, I think my 2 most viewed videos on TikTok are both clips of Vin Diesel. One is him leaving a game, one is him arriving. Yeah. And they've both gotten like over 7 million views. And wow. I would say I have almost 50,000 followers on TikTok. And no joke, I would guess at least 20,000 have come from my Vin Diesel videos. So
that's just you recording Vin Diesel walking to a seat and getting up and leaving a seat.
The power of family, the power of Fast and the Furious. So shout out to Vin Diesel for single-handedly keeping me afloat on social media. I would say food off the top of my head. I think I'm usually so locked in that I'm not necessarily like observing what people are eating. What I will say, so Tristan Thompson signed, and then all of a sudden Kim Kardashian and Kris Jenner were there for several games. So seeing them and kind of the Kardashian, I'd seen them before at games, but it was every kind of now and then. And whereas in the playoffs, it was pretty consistent. I would say the coolest thing with just all the celebrity stuff has been Denzel Washington knows a couple of the older reporters on press row. So he's come over a couple times and asked us random questions of how many points does this guy have? Or what's
during the game?
Yeah. What during timeouts and it's just crazy because I'm this is maybe the best actor ever. Yeah. And one, he's as cool as advertised, literally is exactly as you'd expect him to be, but he's just a giant basketball fan who's coming to us for like the box score and just like what is the team doing with like why are they using this defensive strategy, and like just asking like some really fascinating questions that you wouldn't necessarily expect for a celebrity, even for a celebrity fan who a lot of the times you just kind of think, oh, that they're just there to get attention or this or that. Like Denzel is a big Lakers fan, so that's that like interacting with him a few times and just being able to say I spoke with Denzel Washington, and like that's something that I'm definitely gonna remember from this season.
I like that. That's really cool. You like to hear those kind of stories. I like that. He seems super down to earth. Sandler seems super down to earth. Yeah, I don't know. Have you heard anyone yell? Like, have you heard, like, who's the loudest celebrity fan that you've actually heard from your spot? It doesn't have to be bad. Like, they are just loud.
I mean, Shannon Sharp, I guess.
Really?
Well, I mean, I was at the Memphis game.
And you could hear everything.
Like, he's pretty loud from the sideline, yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't hear that particular, altercation. I saw it from I was on the other side of the floor. But in general, when Shannon Sharp is there, he's pretty loud.
I'm not are you a loud person when you go to fun things? Like if you're at a USC thing, like I don't yell. I've never understood that.
I'm introverted though. So it's
same
like,
here.
It's I'm not gonna do that.
It's not me at all.
And I would personally hate if, not that people are ever gonna recognize me, but if I ever was in a situation where someone recorded it and it got out and like, I was just like, I don't want to be that guy. So
no,
for me, it's just, be chill and have fun.
We're very low key.
Yeah.
That's why we started in this pod 7 years ago, whenever it was.
Yeah.
Very low key. Yeah.
It's a bunch of low key guys who grew up in bottom 10 states.
Who love learning the new CBA, which there's going to be a lot of haves and have-nots.
Which have you heard?
Mm-hmm.
Middle class is going to get squeezed.
Yeah. That's it, folks. I'm telling you, write it down. You're going to have a good time at the cookout this weekend. You're going to be able to hold your own. Jovan Buha, thank you as always, my friend. And let's talk again soon. Don't be a stranger.
Yes, sir.
Well done, nephew. Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.